Okay, now strategies for managing threats. Remember, risks could be positive or negative. Now, the positive risk is called opportunities. The negative risk is called threats. So how do we manage positive and negative threats? Someone was asking this question last week. God's Power was asking this question, and it seems as though he's not in this class right now. Okay, so how do we manage positive and how do we manage negative risks? Please let me also inform us in advance that this particular platform we are right now is the one that only allows us for 40 minutes and it logs off, then we have to come back again. So in case it logs off, please do not hesitate to come back, please. But I'll try as much as I can to round up before it even goes off. Now, strategies for threats. Number one, you could escalate the threat. And what does this mean? Escalation is appropriate when the project team or the project sponsor agrees that a threat is outside the scope of the project or that the proposed response would exceed the project manager's authority. So in such case, you escalate the project. Escalate the risk, rather. Escalated risks are managed at the program level, portfolio level, or other relevant part of the organization and not on the project level. So when the risk has gone beyond what the project manager can handle, they need to raise the alarm, okay, to escalate the risk so that those who have the authority can take over from where he has stopped. The project manager determines who should be notified about the threat and communicates the details to that person or part of the organization. It is important that ownership of escalated threats is accepted by the relevant party in the organization. Threats are usually escalated to the level that matches the objectives that would be affected if the threat occurred. Escalated threats are not monitored further by the project team after escalation, although they may be recorded in the risk register for information. Now, in this case, what are we really referring to as risk escalation? What we simply mean is that the alarm for that particular risk should be raised so that whoever that is responsible for handling such kind of risk should be aware, or any part of the organization responsible for managing such kind of risk should be aware. Now, let's take, for instance, you have been given a project to construct borehole. Let's assume that Ministry of Rural, Department of Rural Development, they gave you a project maybe to do a borehole in Kebbi State, maybe in one local government in Kebbi State, an interior local government in Kebbi State, not in the main town. And the project obviously involves drilling of borehole. So more of your work is going to be operational. Okay, it's going to be more of operational. Now, let's assume in the process, the state government now interferes with the project. In that case, it's no longer your responsibility to handle it. You need to escalate the risk to the higher authority. That's the federal government that sent you, the department that sent you from the federal government. They are the ones that will deal with the case before sending you back. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. Now, someone was sharing a story with me, and that story was very funny. You know, we hear those of us that do engineering work, we hear a lot of things. Now, this man said he was given a project in Kogi State, drilling of borehole, federal project borehole. And when they came to that village, they told him, the people in that village told him that they don't drill borehole in this village, that no matter what they do, they will not find water. But he said the instrument that they used to dictate water has already dictated that there is plenty water in the place they want to drill. He said today, tomorrow, they were drilling, they couldn't find water. They would drill and drill and drill and drill, and it will seem as though it's just few inches to getting water. And they will say, okay, let them go and rest. He said by the time they come back and measure again, it will be like 1,000 miles away. They will start afresh. He said they tried and tried and tried and tried and tried. There was nothing they could do. So they had to call the people that sent them and say, see what we are seeing. No. So they had to escalate the risk. And he said at the end of the day, the project was not conducted. And he said there was one old man in the village that told them that if they must drill a borehole, no, he said the old man told them when they were finally leaving, the old man met them on the way and said, how can they come into this village to drill borehole without first of all coming to see him? That was their mistake, and he's not ready to listen to them. They should go. So that was how the borehole was not drilled. Now, that particular risk is no longer an operational risk. I don't know what to call that kind of risk now, whether it's community risk or I don't know, or spiritual risk. I don't know what to call it. But at that moment, they couldn't be able to handle the risk, and they escalated the risk. And at the end of the day, the government had a case or had a meeting with the community, and the community said they will not drill borehole, that they don't drill borehole in their area, and they had to go. All right. So someone said it's a spiritual risk, and someone else is raising his hand. Maybe he wants to quantify the risk. All right, sir, go ahead. Let's hear from you. Honorable Dulakwa, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think those are the things that we have been discussing. In fact, this is practical example of what you have been discussing. That is stakeholder. That is stakeholder's risk. Before the people to be sent to the community, they should carry elders along.
Yeah, that's right.
What the intention of the federal government to do in that community. That is stakeholder is. You can't come to my house and say you want to plug my vegetable without carrying me along. It's not done.
That's right.
So which is not acceptable. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. So inevitably, that risk is a stakeholder risk, since the stakeholders were not carried out. And I totally agree with what you just said now, because I don't think the federal government, the agency responsible, I don't think they ever did a stakeholder engagement before coming up with the project. And I don't think the project managers themselves, I don't think they did stakeholder engagement also before starting on the project. So that is part of stakeholder spiritual risks. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. Now, is there anyone here who does not understand what we mean by escalating the negative risks? Is there anyone who doesn't understand what we mean by escalating the negative risks? When risks are no longer within the boundaries of what you can control, you raise the alarm so that help can come. That's what we really mean here. Now, the second strategy for managing threats, negative risk, is to avoid, okay, risk avoidance, is when the project team acts to eliminate the threat or protect the project from its impact. When the project team acts to eliminate the risk or eliminate the threat rather, or protect the project from its impact. Now, if we take an instance of what just happened with this particular project that we just spoke about, why we agree that the risk need to be escalated, but assuming they went into prior stakeholder engagement before launching out, they would have actually avoided that risk that came up. Imagine the amount of money that have been sunk in, and obviously I'm sure there will be no refund because the contingencies are beyond the boundaries of the project. The project team can decide to say that they've exhausted almost 70 or even 80% of the project. So they will refund or return 25%, as the case may be. Okay, so there is need to take proactive measures in managing risk. There is need in taking proactive measures in risk management. Okay, all right. Then we have, it may be appropriate for high priority threats with high probability of occurrence and a large negative impact. Avoidance may involve changing some aspect of the project management plan or changing the objective that is in jeopardy in order to eliminate the threat entirely, reducing its probability of occurrence to zero. Still looking at the case that just happened now. So if, yes, we agree that the project the federal government, the agency from the federal government are giving them a project charter, and the project charter inevitably tells that they are the primary stakeholders, like the agency is the primary stakeholder, right? So if they had done some little alterations, okay, on stakeholder management in the project plan, they would have still achieved the project objective. Okay. Now, when I was working in telecom, I used to work with a company. In fact, I worked with about 3 companies, and they were doing virtually the same thing. They said they are into telecom facilities and maintenance. So they do construction of masks, telecom masks. And on this particular project, in fact, there are 2 projects I will use as case studies here. The first project was to be carried out in Akwa Ibom State, Akwa Ibom. It was a rural electrification project that was awarded by the Agency for Rural Electrification, or Rural Electrification Agency, REA, Rural Electrification Agency, under Ministry of Power. And that project came to the organization I was working with at that time for rural electrification in one particular village in Akwa Ibom State. Now, the project manager, please, I will need everybody in this class to listen, because some of us that did engineering, we thought maybe because you studied civil engineering, by default, you are not a project manager. Civil engineering is different from project management. They are 2 different things. Or maybe because you studied project management in school, you are now a project manager by default. It doesn't work that way. Now, this young man, I was his second, but funny enough, in that project, I was not with him. I was in another project that was taking place in Nasarawa State. We were doing an Airtel mask then. So he left to Akwa Ibom State, and I was still in Nasarawa State. Now, he called me and said, no, he didn't call me, it was the wife. The wife called me and said, they've beaten my organ. So I was wondering what happened. And the incident is that when the risk came up on the field, they took him from the field to the hospital. From the hospital, he redeployed back to Lagos. All right. Now, what happened? This was his story, that on the site, some group of Agberos came to the site and they told him, Oga, you've not seen us. So he said he called them and told them that we've seen your elders now, we've seen your chiefs, we've seen all those people, we've paid them. Okay. And they said, the young men told him, say, we've told you our own. Subsequently, they visited again, second occasion. They said, Oga, you have not seen us. And he said the second time he was angry. So he now went to ask the people like, sure, we've paid you people for this thing. Why is it that your youth are still coming? So the elders were like, don't mind them. They will not do anything. Forget about them. Carry on with your project. The third time they came, they beat this, my young man, black and blue, in the field. He was so beaten that they rushed him to hospital. From Akwa Ibom, they moved him from Akwa Ibom to Port Harcourt. From Port Harcourt, he redeployed to Lagos. From Lagos, he resigned from that company because he said there are 2 options. And I think those options were not even optionable enough. The option number 1 is that they need to send him, they need to send the mobile police that will be taking him to and fro the site. Or they should deploy security people on the site, which I think they are all secondary approaches. But before the thought or before the issue could get to me, the whole thing has already spoiled. The company said they are not going to redeploy police, or perhaps deploy police or mobile police or army or whatever security to go to the site, that he has to just go to the site and finish the site. All right. So this kind of situation, especially those of us that are involved with all these federal contracts, NGO contracts, World Bank contracts, we always find ourselves in this kind of issues. Okay. That was rural electrification Obviously, somebody will think the people should be happy that they are bringing rural electrification to them, but they were not really interested in all of that. The primary thing is that they needed to be settled as stakeholders or considered as stakeholders. So it's one thing to be a civil engineer with first class and good civil engineer. It's another thing to be a project manager. And that's why in most construction firms, you see project manager is different from the people in civil or whatever thing they are doing there. So this case, put it into consideration that stakeholders, we talk about stakeholder register. Stakeholders are major sources of risks within a project. That's one. Now, the second project that was about to happen, that I was not also there. Still this my same organ. This was an glow mask to be done in Medugri. There was a village in Medugri. It was to do the mask. So he went with one other staff. They went to do survey. And they said as they were going, they used then we used to have GPS map is not as rampant or was not as rampant as it is now. Like you have Google map and all of that too. It wasn't there then. All those maps wasn't there. They used to give what they call compass. They give what is called compass. Compass is also what do you call it? A map, like a GPS locator, but it's like a clock, a stopwatch. Yes, it's like a stopwatch. So it shows you direction you need to follow. So he said, as they were going, when they got to Meduguri, they started following the GPS locator. That was how they were moving from one bush to another. And he said some funny things. He said there were places they got to. They saw people. The only thing they were wearing there was just white, and the place looked like a sacred ground. And the map was telling them, the locator was telling them to pass through that particular environment. He said, well, they had to pass through, but they were walking with their hats in their hands. He said, another place they got to, the whole bush was clothed with red clothes, and with different all manner of things. And the map, the GPS locator was telling them to pass through. He said the final one that they saw, that they turned back, was that they saw a group of people that they were completely naked. They were both adults and children. They were naked. And the map was asking them to pass through. He said, no, he will not pass through. He turns back. And that was the end of that project, completely. The project never happened again. We didn't bother if there was another road to go and find the perimeter before we start coming forward. Nobody ever bothered. That was the end of the project. So in carrying out project feasibility, it also helps, exemplifies or portrays possible sources of risk, whether the risk should be bought or the risk should be avoided. Okay, that's very, very important. All right. Okay, thank you so much for listening to my for listening to all of my experiences. Funny enough, the only funny experience I've had was once we were either in Ondo State or Ogun State, that the villagers said they didn't want mask. We just came back, nothing happened. There was no fighting, nothing. But we went for stakeholder engagement first, and they said they didn't want that. The terms and conditions were not really favoring. So we left, so we avoided the risk. So it's important we take the time to identify risks and then assess whether the risks need to be avoided or not. Risks that should be avoided, remember, they always come as high priority risks. Okay. Okay, the risk owner may also take action to isolate the project objectives from risk impact if it were to occur. Examples of avoidance actions may include removing the cause of a threat, extending the schedule, changing the project strategy, or reducing scope. Then some risks can be avoided by clarifying requirements, obtaining information, improving communication, or acquiring expertise. Okay. Still on strategies for trade, we have transfer. You can transfer the risk. Transfer involves shifting ownership of a threat to a third party to manage the risk and to bear the impact if the threat occurs, like we have in insurance. So example of a transferred risk strategy is insurance. Risk transfer often involves payment of a risk premium to the party taking on the threat. Transfer can be achieved by a range of actions which include but are not limited to the use of insurance, performance bonds, warranties, guarantees, and so on. Agreement may also be used to transfer ownership and liability for specified risks to another party. Then another strategy we can use is to mitigate. In risk mitigation, action is used or action is taken to reduce the probability of occurrence and or impact of a threat. Early mitigation action is often more effective than trying to repair the damage after the threat has occurred. So in mitigation, we have three things. You can either prevent, or you have what we call defect repair, or you have corrections. So you can either prevent, you repair, or you correct. But most often it's better you do prevention. Then adopting less complex processes, conducting more tests, or choosing a more stable seller are examples of mitigation actions. Mitigation may involve prototype development to reduce the risk of scaling up from bench scale model of a process or product. Where it is not possible to reduce probability, a mitigation response might reduce the impact by targeting factors that drive severity. For example, designing redundancy into a system may reduce the impact from a failure of the component. Then another strategy we can use in managing threats also is to use what we call risk acceptance. Risk acceptance. Risk acceptance acknowledges the existence of a threat, but no proactive action is taken. This strategy may be appropriate for low priority threats, and it may also be adopted where it is not possible or cost effective to address threats in any other way. Acceptance can be either active or passive. The most common active acceptance strategy is to establish a contingency reserve, including amount of time, money, or resources to handle the threat if it occurs. Passive acceptance involves no proactive action apart from periodic review of the threat to ensure that it does not change significantly. Then for opportunities for strategies for managing opportunities, still similar strategies, but let's look at what each of them try to say here. We have the number one strategy for managing opportunity: escalate. This risk response strategy is appropriate when the project team or the project sponsor agrees that an opportunity is outside the scope of the project or that the proposed response would exceed the project manager's authority. Just like what we had in escalating negative risk, you can also escalate positive risk so that those who are interested could take advantage of it. Now, recently, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, June 12th, yes, June 12th specifically, Democracy Day, we had an outing where we went to a primary school, rural school support project. So we went to a primary school and we were providing educational services, support services to them. Now, in that midst, the project was conducted by Lead Africa Foundation, but in the midst of it, I was speaking on the program, or I was a speaker in the program, so to say. Now, the director of projects of the state, SDGs, was there. The Commissioner of Women Affairs had a representative there. The secretary to the local government chairman was there, and some other dignitaries were there. Secretary to the king was there. The village chiefs were there. The pupils, the children that were addressing, and the school teachers, all of them were there. The PTA members were there. Now, in the process, I found that that background was an opportunity to get the people to talk about other issues that might be bothering them in the community. And they went ahead, listed everything. Obviously, there are ones that we from Lead Africa Foundation might not be able to handle. So we shifted it to SDGs, so we shifted to Ministry of Education and all of that. So that's a way of escalating positive risks. Okay, that's a way of escalating positive risks. All right. All right. The next one is to exploit. The exploit strategy may be selected for high priority opportunities where the organization wants to ensure that the opportunity is realized. This strategy seeks to capture the benefit associated with a particular opportunity by ensuring that it definitely happens, increasing the probability of occurrence to 100%. Examples of exploiting responses may include assigning an organization's most talented resources to the project to reduce the time to completion, or using new technologies or technology upgrades to reduce cost and duration. Then we'll have the share. Sharing involves transferring ownership of an opportunity to a third party that it shares some of the benefit if the opportunity occurs. Like we have in limited liability companies where directors come together to share the risk, partnership businesses, and then we also have risk shared with insurance companies. It's important to select the new owner of a shared opportunity carefully so they are best able to capture the opportunity for the benefit of the project. Risk sharing often involves payment of a risk premium to the party taking on the opportunity. Examples of sharing actions include forming risk sharing partnerships, teams, special purpose companies, or joint ventures. They will have the enhance. The enhanced strategy is used to increase the probability and or impact of an opportunity. Early enhancement action is often effective than trying to improve the benefit after the opportunity has occurred. The probability of occurrence of an opportunity may be increased by focusing attention on its causes. Where it is not possible to increase probability, an enhancement response might increase the impact by targeting factors that drive the size of the potential benefit. Examples of enhancement opportunities include adding more resources to an activity to finish early. Now, most of these opportunities we are looking at, or most of these strategies we are looking at for maximizing opportunities are well exploited by NGOs. NGOs can have enhancement projects. NGOs can have initiative to escalate risks. And in fact, one of the major approaches that NGOs use to secure contracts is by escalating risk or by enhancing risks. By escalating risks, they call the attention of donor agencies who now come to say, okay, how do we manage this risk you have escalated? Others could be an enhancement risk. That's risks that might not have adequate approaches to managing them. They can also bring up approaches that can enhance the management of those risks. And that's where we'll now talk about grassroots NGO projects. Okay, grassroots NGO projects or grassroots projects. Most of the grassroots projects are enhancement projects. Okay, most of the grassroots projects are escalated risks that turned out to become projects. All right, so if you're here and you're an NGO, some of these things we are mentioning here are very, very important in managing opportunities and also managing threats. Then another one is to accept. Okay, accepting an opportunity acknowledges its existence, but no proactive action is taken. So we've mentioned about this in the other side, where the acceptance can be active or passive. Now, as among the processes of risk management, we have implement risk responses. You've escalated risks, you've enhanced risk, you've shared risk, you've transferred risk, and all of that. Now, all of those responses need to be managed. The last thing we dealt with now is planned risk responses. So how do we now implement risk responses? Those escalated risks, how do we implement them? Implementing Risk responses is the process of implementing agreed upon risk response plan. The key benefit of this process is that it ensures that the agreed upon risk responses are executed as planned in order to address overall project risk exposure, minimize individual project rates, and maximize individual project opportunities. This process is performed throughout the project. In the input, we have the project management plan, where we need the risk management plan, then we have the project documents, where we have the lessons learned register, the risk register, the risk report, and then we have the organizational process asset. The other tools and techniques, we have the expert judgment, where we talk about all of the technicalities involved. Then we have the interpersonal and team skills using influencing. Then we have the project management information system. On the output, we have the change request, project documents updates, where we'll update the issue log, lessons learned register, project team assignment, risk register, and the risk report. Now, the next thing we look at there is monitoring the risks. Okay, monitoring risk is the process of monitoring the implementation of agreed upon risk response plans, tracking identified risks, identifying and analyzing new risks, and evaluating risk process effectiveness throughout the project. The key benefit of this process is that it enables project decisions to be based on current information, based on overall project risk exposure and individual project risk. This process is performed throughout the project. On the input, we have the project management plan, we have the project documents as stated on the screen. Then we have the work performance data and work performance reports. On the tools and techniques, we have the data analysis, where we need technical performance analysis, technical performance to know the depth of performance to the identified risks. Okay. Then we have the reserve analysis, the contingency reserve, whether they can still handle the risks on contingent or not. Then we have the audits, and then we have the meetings. On the output, we have work performance information, change requests, project management plan updates, and project documents update for every document on the screen. Then we have the organizational process asset update. Now, because of the sake of time, I will just run through and know if there is any question as we will be rounding up right now. Please, any question for me? We just have 5 minutes to this. Any question for me?